Welcome to TypeScript FM, the friendly podcast for TypeScript developers where we bring you news, updates, and interviews from the community with plenty of tomfoolery sprinkled in. I'm your host, Kamran Ayub, and I'm joined by my co-host and best bud, Eric Onerheim. Together, we're the two TypeScript fools. Welcome to the show. Welcome to the show.
Welcome to the show.
Hey, how's it going?
It's going. I got sick again.
Yeah.
Thank you, daycare.
Yeah.
You
were starting to get sick last week. You still recorded, but you could kind of hear it.
Yeah.
I feel like I can kind of hear it now.
Yeah.
And I've got a stuffy nose, so that's no fun either. But as I was just telling you, I think it's just allergies because I usually get springtime allergies.
Yeah. That was fun. I got my taxes done. They're in the mail.
That's good. I submitted mine too.
So yeah. I'm pleased as punch to send everyone money. I get no money back this year. Everyone gets some of my money.
Yeah. You know, that's kind of the funny thing. And I talk about this in my personal finance talk, but the goal of taxes is to actually not get a refund, even though it's sort of like a celebratory thing. Oh yeah,
It's like a cultural phenomenon here.
I got money back. The thing is that the government has held on to that money the entire year, and they were able to invest it and get interest on it, and you were not.
Mm-hmm.
So that's sort of the funny irony about it. So the best optimization you can do is to have a $0 refund, because that means that you've kept all the money that you could have kept, and you also have to turn around and invest it or put it into savings or something like that.
That's right. Yeah. I'm going to be making a change because the figure that I had to mail hurt a little bit.
That's funny. But anyway, this is the point of having a CPA, so that you can talk to them, and especially someone who deals with both individual and small business, then they can help advise you on what approach to take and when to take it.
Yeah, have an accountant. It's way easier.
Exactly. Cool. This week, I have just been working on my new course. Well, not really a new course. I've resumed my MCP course, doing more advanced features. So I've been working on that. And then on the side, I have been using Copilot to do some new feature development for Keep Track My Games. And not necessarily a new feature, but actually a rewrite of an existing feature so that I can build some more new features. So it's related to the filtering system that I have for lists. So you have your game collection, you can filter by release year, or you can filter by tags, you can filter by status and things like that. But it was pretty limited. For example, I wanted to add a way that you could do between, a between filter. So you could say, I want to see releases between 2005, 2010. Before, it would only allow distinct value filters. So you get this list of 100 different years, and you'd have to go through and check a checkbox for one of them. And this is ridiculous. And it gets even worse with developers and publishers. The list can be 1,000 items long, and it would just be rendering that entire list as checkboxes in the UI. So I was like, you know what, this is not going to work. I want to add some new filters. So now's a good time to revisit this system. And I actually had Copilot rewrite it for me. And I had pretty good test coverage to begin with, but I was still lacking some. So I had to write new tests, and both from the service level tests in .NET, and then I also had Cypress tests, end-to-end tests for the UI. And over the course of a weekend, I'm almost done. It's feature complete. And I'm just doing polish and refactoring now. So I had a pretty good experience with it. And I take a phased approach whenever I use Copilot to do stuff. That's the most reliable way that I've seen to do it, where you just have it work in very small chunks. And I just tell it to phase the work. And then after each phase, it does verification. So it either writes tests, updates tests, or verifies that the build works and things like that. Because the worst thing you can do is just expect it to build out this entire thing end to end, and then it works at the end. No, that's usually not what happens. It's usually totally broken by the end of it. It's made weird design decisions throughout the entire time. So I find going back and forth with it and then checking in with it and doing checkpoints just makes a really big difference into the quality that comes out at the end.
Yeah, I think this is really in line with the spec-driven development kind of methodology that we're seeing with Claude and some of these other like high profile like rewrites.
Right.
Mostly for giggles, where they take a test suite of a popular framework and they're able to like recreate it.
Yes.
I think Next had that happen. Like Cloudflare took like a expensive experiment, but they did it and recreated Next using the test suite.
Yep.
Let's move into the news of the week of March 23rd, 2026. And we have a couple of security announcements. We kind of primed the pump for this already, but on March 24th, like we said in previous episodes, there was going to be Node.js releases for all of the release lines. This security release includes a bunch of vulnerabilities across the board. Notably, there is a denial of service flaw in the server name identification callback for TLS. So there's a way that this could be exploited to do a denial of service attack. There's another fix, an issue where someone could send you a malformed header and crash your process. Not great.
Mm-hmm.
There was a Node.js permission model bypass. Remember, Node.js is now competing in that same permission space as Dino, but there was a permission bypass where you could do a bind or listen without the allow net flag. Kind of a big problem.
Sneaky.
Yeah, very sneaky stuff.
Nice. Well, I guess the whole takeaway there is just update your Node versions.
Update your Node.
So if you're using MVM or FNM or Vite Plus, to manage your Node versions, go check out whatever the latest patch version is for your release line. I did that on Tuesday.
Yep. Important stuff.
Cool. So last week on Monday, actually, so it was kind of funny because we had thought about putting this in the last episode, but technically as part of this last week's news, the Aspire Conf happened and they announced Aspire 13.2. So as a reminder, Aspire is a language agnostic distributed local development environment. So it helps you build distributed apps. And the joke goes, if you talk to a database, you have a distributed app, right? So unless you have a single website that doesn't do any talking to any external services, you probably have a distributed app. And you know that can be a real pain to develop locally. Like in the case of a database, you need to stand up the database. How are you going to host it? Are you going to use a Docker container? Are you going to force your developers to install, MySQL locally on their machine? Like, how are you going to do it? Are you going to seed the database? And how are you going to handle that? How are you going to set it up so that it can be worked with your app? Aspire lets you do all of that with code first. And it's built on top of the same foundation as Kubernetes. So it does use containers. That's one of the prerequisites. And it's also built with .NET. But the cool thing is in Aspire 13.2, it installs .NET for you. So you don't even have to install the SDK. You just can literally install Aspire, and that's the only thing you need, along with a container runtime. So those are the only two prerequisites you need. And the other cool thing is this entire time, because it was .NET based, you had to define your local development environment in C# code because it was a .NET based tool. But like I said, it's language agnostic. So guess what? In 13.2, they announced a new TypeScript AppHost. So you can define your entire environment in TypeScript.
Woo!
Yeah. So this is awesome. So this is why it's super relevant. And in the news section for the TypeScript FM podcast, because now you can use Aspire and you can create an apphost.ts file and it just reads it. And this is not going to be the only language extension. In the future, they're working on like Python AppHost and probably other ones. So this is really cool. And it's all the same APIs, the C# API. They have a dedicated talk in the conference about how they made this work because it's not like they re-implemented all the C# code. I think they did some clever stuff with code generation to get this to work. So you can check out the full playlist for AspireConf if you want to dive deeper into that and learn more about how you can use it. I love Aspire. So, and I don't work for them or anything like that, but it's just so much easier to create it's like a Docker Compose alternative, and it's way better because you can do anything you want to because it's just code. You can like write your own utilities and things like that. So it's great. And then big shout out to friend of the podcast, Josh Goldberg, because they introduced a TypeScript host. They had Josh come and talk about using Aspire with TypeScript. So he walks through how to build an Aspire app with TypeScript. So I think you should definitely check that out.
Yeah, it's a quick talk. It's 30 minutes, but you should definitely check it out. TypeScript and Aspire with Josh Goldberg.
Yeah. Cool. We have some minor browser news. Firefox 149 is out. What's interesting is that they introduced split view. So this is like split tabs. And some other browsers have had this for a little while, like Microsoft Edge has had this for a while. And the browser that I use, which is Zen, is built on top of Firefox, but they already had this ability too. But now if you're just using vanilla Firefox, you get this. So you can open up tabs in a split view so you can see them side by side. But the other big thing was that they're introducing and rolling out a free VPN. So this is like totally free for any Firefox user, but you get 50 gigabytes of coverage every month. So if you are on coffee Wi-Fi or you're on some other sort of public Wi-Fi or at the airport, you just need like some protection. You can just turn on the free VPN from the toolbar and bam, you're covered for 50 gigs, which is pretty cool. So they say that this is a progressive rollout. So it's rolling out to people in the US and UK and I think a few other countries. So it might not be quite available in your region, but if you install Firefox 149, I guess you can check out and see if you have access to this.
Yeah, one thing I will note with VPNs is it's a trust delegation, right? You're changing who you trust. So if you trust Firefox, then this is great for you. And if you trust XYZ VPN provider that you hear about on YouTube, excellent. And you believe in whatever they say on their website. So it's really a trust delegation activity if you're believing in it for security and not for access, for example.
I think when I was reviewing VPNs, the most trusted, most recommended one was Proto VPN. These are the people that make Proton Mail and Proto Drive, like a Google Drive alternative. So they know encryption super well. They're based in Sweden, I want to say. So yeah, I think if you were going to get your own VPN subscription, you'd probably want to go with something like Proto VPN.
Yeah, and if you have like a need for super high operational security, like super high OPSEC, where you don't want to be tied to a credit card or whatever, Molvad is another really good.
That's another one I heard. Yep.
You can literally mail them an envelope full of cash.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah. So if you have a need to be extremely anonymous, you literally mail them your account number, envelope full of cash, and then you could use drop shipping if you wanted to make sure that your postmark didn't correlate with where you lived.
Nice.
Not that I've needed to do that.
Wink, wink. That's pretty sweet. Okay, next up on the news, if you've heard of Replay, Replay is a time travel debugging tool, and it's built by Mark Erickson of Redux fame, a maintainer of Redux. This is a paid tool, I want to say, but this last week they introduced a React Renders MCP tool. So if you recall, in the last episode we talked about Next.js 16.2, and they added this Next Browser CLI, which basically provides a window into the current browser runtime context for agentic tools like MCP. And so this is basically the same type of thing, that this is an MCP tool that provides React render information. So that includes performance, timing, component trees, all sorts of stuff that your agents did not have access to before and was locked inside of the React Dev Tools is now exposed through this MCP tool. So that's pretty cool.
All right. Last on the news is a PSA. Axios, the extremely popular, the most popular maybe, NPM package got in a supply chain attack. The details here are that somehow a malicious actor was able to publish two malicious updates to the Axios package. Those were version 1.14.1 is malicious and 0.30.4 are malicious. And they added a new dependency called plain crypto.js, which wraps the real crypto library, I think crypto.js, and it's using this as a way of doing multi-stage payloads, including remote access Trojans, RAT for short, capable of executing arbitrary commands, exfiltrating system data, and persisting on infected machines. That's kind of like a worm-like behavior.
This is bad. This is bad news.
This is extremely bad news. I don't know if I gave it enough gravitas, but this gets more than 100 million downloads a month.
Yep.
So you are likely using Axios.
In fact, I am. In fact, I am. And so after you told me this, I went and the way to figure out if you're infected is to go check your package lock JSON and your dependencies. So I grepped for those versions and I grepped for plain JS, plain crypto.js. And luckily I did not have those infected versions, but it was close. I was like 1.13 or something like that. So if I had done an NPM update and updated my dependencies, as I was doing on Friday, where I was auditing my NPM dependencies and trying to update them to bring them up to date, like I could have easily been got. Now, we have talked numerous times about how to mitigate this type of stuff, and I feel like the number one step is to do npm uninstall-g npm. Get rid of npm totally. Okay? That's
Don't use npm.
That's the first step, because this is like the third or fourth huge high-profile supply chain attack that's done through a post-install script, and that's still not disabled. And if you try to disable it globally, you can run into other problems. So the easiest way to mitigate this is to switch to something like PNPM or something else that's a little bit more, has some more protection for not running post-install scripts or doing them interactively, so you're at least notified that this thing is going to install. And then you can also do your package cooldown, right? So you can say don't update packages that have just been released within the last 48 hours. Give them some cooldown. Yeah. And there's a bunch of other things that you can do.
And as a maintainer, no shade against Jason, the lead maintainer of Axios. He was trying to do the right things. He's got 2FA, MFA on, all the stuff. They had trusted publishing on. There's just a DX problem here. It's really easy to have subtle misconfigurations, and that's how they got. So you should turn off legacy token publishing entirely. You should not do it anywhere. You should kill those tokens. In fact, we have.
Yes. Yep. And I think that npm is forcing you to do that. So it'd be interesting. I don't know if we know the root cause yet, like how it was compromised, but that was sort of the theory, is that there might have been an old token that was not revoked that someone got access to.
Yeah. Scary stuff. So definitely go double check your Axios versions, especially if you were working yesterday, you might have got.
Yep. Okay, we do have some library watches, a bunch actually, so probably don't want to spend too much time on every single one of them, but Astro 6.1 was released. So I'm just going to read some of the bullet points for the highlights. Sharp codec specific image defaults for that Sharp image library, advanced Smarty Pants configuration, internationalization fallback routes for integrations, smoother view transitions on mobile, Heat 8 compatibility warning, React hydration fixes, and cross-site request forgery protection behind reverse proxies. So you can go read a little bit more about that. Okay, next up, this is a relatively brand new library. It is actually more like a UI framework, and it's called ArrowJS, and it is like an agentic framework. So I know that I've talked a little bit before about MCP and how there's an MCP extension to do like MCP UI. So basically, imagine that your chatbot can generate UI inside the conversation area. So rather than you having to go to a whole separate UI, a whole separate app to do something. So it could be as simple as like render a date picker, and then you can choose a date. And then that input gets sent back to the agent. So this is a UI framework, and it's type safe. And what it does is it allows the agent to create isolated WebAssembly sandboxes, and it uses that to render the DOM inline direct in the app. So there's no iframes, there's no predefined UI components. So you can basically build on-demand UI if you're doing like an agentic type of experience. Now, what's interesting is that it says it's the first UI framework. And I think that's maybe a stretch, because there's already stuff like A2 UI, which is like Agent 2 UI, and MCP UI. There's a few other agentic UI standards and things that people are adopting, but they might be right in that they might be the first actual framework that can render components and things like that generically on demand. So anyway, I saw that and thought that was pretty neat. So you can check that out if that interests you.
Another library watch we have is OxMgr. And if you have ever been in the business of running node servers, you might have been using something called PM2 to run long-lived node processes. This is a modern lightweight process manager written in Rust as an alternative to PM2 for managing any executable across platforms. What's neat about this is it's language agnostic, so it can manage any executable, not just Node. It's cross-platform, so if you are doing dev on Windows, which a lot of us are, or you're doing dev on Linux or Mac OS, it'll work across platform. Low overhead, so it's a Rust daemon, so that's always good. It's got those restart policies, health checks, yada, 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 that you might need. Config versed workflows that are idempotent, so that means you can apply them multiple times and get the same result over and over. You don't have to worry about reapplying the same config and having it bust or something. And it has PM2 ecosystem compatibility with a ecosystem config, which is pretty cool. They also have a interactive terminal UI, which sings to my heart because I like to do things over the terminal UI. But yeah, so if you are a person that is looking to manage running services, containers, executables, even if you need to run them locally, this might be a thing for you.
Nice.
We've talked in the past about AshTypeScript, and AshTypeScript is an automatic TypeScript type generation for Ash resources and actions. Ash is an Elixir framework for doing like Elixir dev. So if you're like that kind of person, you really like Elixir, this might be a thing to check out. We've talked about this in the past. But they've just released a new version, and that's AshTypeScript 0.16.0, which comes with a long requested feature called typed channels. This allows you to generate end-to-end type-safe Phoenix channels. The TypeScript client is generated for you, and on top of the full remote procedure call generation for your actions, it works with any TypeScript front end. So this is pretty slick.
I that's one of the languages on my list of I'd be interested in learning about that because it does have a lot of corollaries with TypeScript. It's very similar. So next up, this is a library to write wizards, multi-step workflows for any kind of framework using TypeScript code. So this is called Pathwrite. And what's interesting about it is that you can write your wizard steps, your workflow, as a path definition in plain TypeScript, and you can use it with any framework. So you can test it, you can test the logic, you can test it without a browser, you don't need the DOM, there's no component mounting, and then you can also version it independently so that you can keep your flow and your presentation logic separate. So like the business logic is separate from the presentation. So they've got a React Native wrapper for both iOS and Android. They've got React, Vue, Angular, Svelte, Solid. All the meta frameworks are supported. So you can go and look at kind of how it compares to some other things like XState or React Step Wizard or Formic, if you're familiar with those. So anyway, this was pretty cool. I saw this on Blue Sky. It was from a developer, and he said that I've had this idea for like 10 years, but I'd never had the resources to build it. And now with the help of Claude Code, they were able to ship this thing. So it'll be really interesting to see where it goes from here.
Yeah, their live demos are really cool looking. Like they have like the linear wizard, the conditional steps, single step forms, step choice, which is like depending on what step you have a dynamic route, persistent sessions, so it'll autosave. You can have multi-session management and progress restoration. So like if you've gotten through part of your wizard, you want to like rehydrate. You don't want to make your user re-enter all of the things like certain medical forms I've been forced to fill out recently. This is really cool looking. Like I look at this, I love when they have a live demo because it's just so nice. Like these live demos look sharp. Like they're really nice looking.
It's also hard to argue with code running in the browser.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so speaking of workflows, there is another library watch. This is a new library, part of a larger engine called Reflow. Reflow is a durable workflow engine for TypeScript. It checkpoints every step to SQLite and resumes from the last completed step after a crash. So and this is, I think, designed for agentic workflows. So no repeated LLM calls, no wasted tokens, no duplicate side effects, one package, no services to deploy. So it has standard schema support. So you can bring Zod, Valbot, Archetype, or any compatible library. Completed steps are never re-executed, even after a crash. There's also per-step retry with backoff for flaky APIs and rate limits, typed inputs and outputs. And so you can use that with the Reflow-TS package. And I really like their little website. Again, they have live code running in the browser, and they got like here's what it's like without Reflow. Here's what happens if like a step fails, and then it has to rerun the workflow from the start. And with Reflow, you can see that it just resumes from the last successful step using checkpoints. And I know that we have talked about workflow engines before where they're like hosted workflow engines and stuff like that where they can be pretty complicated. This one just works across like your local machine, and it's not like a fully hosted thing that you have to like buy into. You can store the database if you have multiple machines and you give it access to the database, start the workflow engine on multiple machines. You can make it distributed, but you don't have to go and host it in the cloud or anything like that. Like you can self-host this, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, and on their website, they do say that Reflow fits best when you need durable local workflows, not distributed orchestration. So that's one thing to keep in mind here. So this is not a thing that I think you're going to look at for your like SaaS provider. You're going to make like a big cloud, like user onboarding workflow this way. This is more for your local tools.
Yeah, I think this is purpose built for like CLIs and agent tools. So like MCP, for example, this would be a great fit for a local MCP server. But yeah, pretty neat.
I have a really fun one called Pretext, which is a new library in TypeScript via Computer redacted on Blue Sky, where you can do text layout in pure TypeScript. And it kind of broke the internet for a hot minute because it'll do multi-line text management and layout fast and accurate. So you can do rendering to the DOM, canvas, SVG as soon as possible, and even on the server side, which is pretty wild. So Pretext sidesteps the need for DOM measurements using like get client bounding rec and offset height, which can trigger like layout reflow. It implements its own text measurement logic using the browser's own font engine as the source of truth. So this is pretty cool. They have like a really slick demo showing like some really wild stuff. And then someone like immediately went and had an anime girl dancing through a bunch of text and having the text like reflow around the anime girl, which was hilarious. So we have a link to that post. It's in Korean, but it's hilarious. So there you go.
That's funny. I could see a use case for this in game dev.
Well, yeah,
because
100%.
you often need to measure text in order to like get it to fit into the UI and things like that. Especially if you're doing custom like canvas UI rendering. I think if you're using DOM rendering and stuff like that, it's a little bit easier. But even then, sometimes you do need to do very granular positioning or measurement to like get the UI to look right based on the incoming text that could be dynamic.
For sure.
That's cool. Nice. Okay, well, let's move on to some community highlights.
Yes.
What do you got for us to start off with?
Via Josh Goldberg on Blue Sky, friend of the show, Josh Goldberg, is Golar gets a linter, and then Auvred writes it's a TypeScript-based linter that wraps TSGo and integrates type-aware linting and type checking LSP features right in the tool. I believe that's right.
Yeah.
This is super cool.
This is pretty cool. And remember that right now TSGo does not have an API. So you might be wondering how the heck are they getting like type information from the TSGo CLI? So along with this blog post, Auvred's done some research, and he's captured that research into a repository on how to do hybrid type-aware linting. And basically the too long didn't read is that the foreign function interface sync communication method looks like the best approach for TSGo-based JavaScript linters because it offers the strongest performance and developer experience trade-off, while IPC sync is too slow to be practical. So FFI sync works great for both JS and native integrations. So if you remember, if you call back to our TypeScript 6.7 episode, we talked about what's in store for the future TSGo compiler API, like how are developers going to interact with the type system through the compiler? And they were not sure. Like they were exploring what different interfaces they can use, and IPC had come up. That's inter-process communication. So what's interesting is that through Auvred's research on how to build a hybrid type-aware linter, they said that FFI sync is better than IPC. So I wonder I wonder if that will influence like what the final TSGO compiler API might look like. So that's pretty interesting.
Awesome. Speaking of Josh Goldberg, we have State of Flint, spring 2026.
Yeah.
Hot off the press, posted on March 30th.
What is the state of Flint?
What is the state of Flint? Well, this blog post covers a lot of what they've done in Flint and since Flint's start in 2025 and through the first few months of 2026. Some of the big highlights here are that Flint's core package, flint.fyi/core, now sets up all of the primitives for running a linter runtime, defining plugins, creating rules for those plugins, and defining like low-level node APIs for interacting with those things. Right now, Flint offers most of the things that traditional linters have. So in that sense, it's feature complete. In that sense, the big headliner, though, is Flint's biggest thing is that it supports first-class cross-file linting. This means that rules can pull information from multiple files at a time. So also, there's a Flint CLI. Flint is the primary and current only way of running lint, but it has all of the things that you might expect a linter CLI to have. It's going to be analogous to like Biome, ESLint, OxLint, yada, yada, yada. It has all the things you might expect that it'll have. As far as lint rule progress, they have about 400 of 1,000 rules done, which is 40% of the goal. And then of those, approximately 300 of the TypeScript rules done. So that's about 60% of the goal. So this is pretty huge. Like they're making a lot of progress.
That all sounds very exciting, so we'll have to see how Flint evolves. Next up, I do have a blog post from Radoslaw Miernik on refactoring with generic types. And I saw this on Reddit, and it is a very well-written blog post. And basically, he uses an example of like a table rendering API that renders a list of movies with different columns. And starts out with having like the columns be stringly typed, like this render can only support, rendering a movie object, or things like that. And then he slowly step-by-step refactors it into a more generic method, more generic table render that can render an object with columns and how to type all of that. Like how do you get it to use a different type for a different field, or how do you map each type as a column and things like that. So if you don't feel like you're an expert on generics yet, or you feel like you still don't fully understand them all the time, this is a great blog post that should give you some more information and deep dive into how generics work. Next up, if you're a Preact fan, then you probably already know about Preact signals, which is like an alternative to like React state. Signals are a pull mechanism where a signal gets updated and you can pull for the result. And wouldn't it be cool if you could create a signal on the server and resume it on the client? And so Jovi on Blue Sky did a blog post on bridging the server-client boundary with signals, specifically a new mixed signals library. And
which is a great name.
Yeah, and they talk about some of the like design implications of like how do you serialize and resume a signal that was created on the server, and then how do you get the client signal to talk back to it. And basically a lot of this ends up looking very much like Signal R from like .NET, where you can maintain state on the server and sync it down to the client. So there's a lot of like syncing and serialization mechanisms that are going into this, but this is pretty cool. So you can check out some of those details. The other thing that came up on my Blue Sky feed, and this is what I was alluding to in the introduction, is that Paulo Matos wrote about how he built an entire JS engine from scratch that passes 100% of test 262, which is the ECMAScript language specification, and he built it all with Claude Opus. And it goes into a lot of details about how that process went, how much it cost, which is like ridiculous, like $3,000 to $4,000, I think, is what it cost him, and basically what he accomplished. And so it's a really interesting post about how, with a very good set of like specification tests, it was able to pass them 100%. And I think that he only had 4 hours of like keyboard time, whereas the longest development loop was to implement temporal, which agent spent 16 hours on. It's a JavaScript engine written in Rust. It's called JSSE. And yeah, he just goes into a lot of detail about how this worked and what he learned from it. Just to be clear, like, this is not supposed to be a production-ready JavaScript engine. That was not the goal. The goal was to see how well could an agent write a JS engine from scratch and pass all the tests. And he was able to do so. So it's not very performant. Like, performance was not a goal. But he does talk about some of the future ideas for this, which could focus on performance and could focus on making it more production-ready. But it's more of like a case study on like what it takes for an agent to like do something like this. So it's kind of impressive.
Yeah. And one of the, if you're interested in like the TLDR, definitely jump to like the what I learned section of the blog post.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we found this to be true, but the plan matters more than the code.
Yes.
So the lesson isn't that you must write the plan yourself. It's that you must make sure that the plan is good.
Yes.
You don't have to write the plan, but is the plan good?
Yep. And this is how my development loop looks like when I'm using Copilot. I have like a top-level plan.md file. I write the first draft of it, like, hey, I found these issues. This is what I'm doing right now, actually, this week. Okay, I identified these issues, and here's where I think there needs to be fixes and what tests need to be updated. And this is my acceptance criteria. Like, this is what I need fixed. And then I have it review the plan, have it explore the code base, and then expand the plan into phases. And then I have it stop. So I'm like, I'm going to review the plan. Do not go forward with the plan until I give you the go-ahead. And so then I go through it and I look at, okay, did it get this right? Did it get something else right? It thought that it needs to do this thing where I don't think it really needs to do that, so I'm going to remove it from the plan. So I just have it iterate a little bit. And then once I'm happy with what it looks like, I tell it to go. Like, I'm like, go forth and build. And so then it goes on a loop of like, going through each phase, task by task. And what's nice about that is that sometimes it gets stuck. Sometimes it runs into an error. I might need to manually fix something. But then all I can say is like, okay, proceed. So, and it knows like, okay, here's where we're at in the plan, and I can just continue from it where it left off. It also helps with like the context rot problem where you have a very long running session. And so things from the top of the context drop off because they're outside the window. And you can just start a brand new conversation and you can resume from the plan because you have it all written down. And if you also tell it to update its progress in the plan, then any kind of agent can just go in and see where everything's at, explore the code base again, and get going again. So that's kind of the development loop that I landed on for some of the stuff I've been doing. And it seems like that is also reflected in Paulo's experience.
Yeah. Another thing that I thought was interesting too is that test 262 was a great feedback signal.
Yeah.
And I think this just kind of underscores how like unit tests are extremely important.
Yes.
Like things that are good for people are also good for agents.
Yeah, I think it would have been a different story if you were trying to write a JavaScript engine from scratch and did not have a spec to go against. Like, it would not go well, I don't think.
No, I don't think it would.
No. So anyway, we can talk more about that later. Sort of related to this, we're sort of on this AI agent train talking about stuff in this episode. Chrome DevBlog also published a post this week on when to use WebMCP and MCP. So a few episodes back, we talked about how Chrome was announcing the WebMCP standard, the W3C standard. And I think one of the questions that they got was like, okay, does this supersede MCP? Like, do I not need to do MCP anymore? And the answer is no, they're two separate things. So the easy way to imagine this is WebMCP is a window into your app in the browser. A normal MCP server has no idea, can't get into the browser to like understand your app, right? And that's something that you would have to write on the back end. So MCP is for back end, WebMCP is for front end, is the easy way to distinguish between the two things. So they're separate. You could do one or the other. You don't have to do either of them. But if you do want to expose your front end code and tools to the user through an agent tool, then WebMCP is going to be a good way to do that.
Next up, I have a blog post from Michael Dowden, Remodel Your TypeScript Code with Decorators. After my own heart, I love Decorators so much, and it hurts me deeply that Decorators have had such a sordid history. But this blog post talks about like, okay, you know, let's dive right into some interesting use cases for decorators.
Basically, I mean, they're really good for like cross-cutting concerns.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Where you need to do like method level stuff that makes it a little bit easier. So if you want to add logging, you add a decorator. If you want to remove logging, you remove the decorator. You don't have to touch any of your logic code, your application code.
Yeah. And one warning, though, is this blog post is all from the perspective of experimental decorators, but you can use the new ECMA decorators. So that might be a thing to keep in mind when you're taking a look at this. Another community highlight I have is a Vitest crash course from WebDev Simplified. They make great videos. I won't say any more, but if you are wanting to learn more about Vitest, check out that video. And then the last thing I have is a bleed of the week. And I thought this was really funny. I chuckled, but it's from Blue Sky user Nexamind, which says, TypeScript is just JavaScript wearing a seatbelt, which I thought was funny.
Nice. So true.
I have a secret of the handbook this week, and that is unique symbols in your types are super useful. You can basically do nominal typing in TypeScript's type system without doing the weird tag thing, the tag type thing. You can do unique symbols, which mirrors the idea that this is like an opaque, unique thingy. You could say, hey, unique symbol, unique thingy, they are not assignable to each other. So if you had a unique symbol like A and unique symbol B, so like say I have const unique symbol A, colon, unique symbol is the type, const unique symbol B, colon, unique symbol, they're not assignable to each other. This is super useful. And I've used this before when I wanted to prevent people from overriding a method. So like if you wanted to do like, I forget what the C# keyword is for that now. Sealed. That's what it's called. Sealed. If you want to emulate sealed in TypeScript, you can do that and return a unique symbol out of your type definition. And no one can produce that same unique symbol unless you export it. So that is one way to prevent people from overriding your methods. Now, it comes with some DX sadness because people will try. They will try, and they'll get like a very odd error message in TypeScript being like, hey, you can't return unique symbol because you literally can't because you can't produce it. But it's an interesting trick. So I thought I'd bring that up.
Well, yeah, and I don't know how many people are familiar that there is even a unique keyword in TypeScript.
Yeah. Check it out.
So this is not like a type definition that is named like unique. No. This is like the literal keywords unique symbol, like two keywords that creates a unique symbol type. So it's pretty interesting. All right. Well, you have some cool links.
I have a couple cool links. The first one is related to TypeScript somewhat, but there's a really great YouTube video I just watched about type systems and what do we mean by algebraic data types or union types or sum types and all of these like, type system jargon that gets thrown around. And it's really kind of a no-nonsense video about, okay, this is actually what they mean. And they go through it in a language, like a pseudo language that looks like TypeScript and Rust got together and made a new language.
Nice.
It's kind of what the pseudo lang that they're using. But I recommend watching it. It's about 9 minutes, super fast, really enlightening. I learned something, so check it out. And then I've been like a huge space nerd lately. I've been watching a lot of like Anton Petrov cosmology videos about the space and universe. And there's a really great Action Lab video that I just watched talking about like some weird quirks of relativity and like how things that can be causally linked are time-like events and things that cannot possibly be causally linked are space-like events and how you can actually produce space-like events here on Earth. And that baked my noodle.
Wow.
So definitely watch that. Blew my mind.
That's really neat. By the way, I did end up watching that 2-hour video that you had mentioned a while back in your cool links about the 1,000 car batteries.
Yes.
400, was it 400 car batteries?
Styropyro.
Yep. So
that was awesome.
That was like something where I was like, why can't I not stop watching this? This is so fascinating.
Yeah. We should put that link back on here because it's worth a watch.
It was pretty funny. And I also saw that someone on our Blue Sky who follows the show was like, I watched this. I could not stop watching for like 2 hours either. So you at least had 2 people that fully watched that video.
It's a lot of current.
That's 6 hours between the 3 of us that at least we can't get back anymore. But for one of my cool links, I came across this this week because I'm on Matt Pocock's newsletter for AI Hero, because Matt is someone I follow for like real world AI coding advice and like seeing how he does it, because he's always been a trusted source for TypeScript learning, and now I follow him for what he does with AI tools. And so he has a full 45-minute video, totally free to watch, not part of any kind of paywall. And it is a real world Claude building a feature step by step. So you get to see how Matt Pocock builds stuff with Claude code. So if you have sort of been like on the fence about like, I'm not sure how, I mean, I'm maybe interested in using Claude code, but I have no idea how to use it. I told it to build this thing and it just was total slop. I think that this could be enlightening. And I believe that he uses a very similar workflow to what I do. But he's a little bit more systematic about it because he's been doing it a little bit longer than I have. So he's got built-in prompts that he's created. He's got Claude skills that he uses to create like PRDs and to do stuff like ask me about the feature that I'm building to make sure that it's, I'm speccing it out in a complete way. And then he does the same thing where he has the agent do a small slice of feature, write the tests, make sure that it works before trying to move on to the next phase of the feature. So no one-shotting type of stuff. So I think this is a really nice way to get some insight into how to actually use these tools to get stuff done. So I would recommend taking a watch.
For sure.
All
It's
right.
time for the Minnesota long goodbye.
That's right.
So what's on your long goodbye? What's on your mind?
I mean, I do have something on my mind, which is I feel like we have been seeing now a little bit more, getting a little bit more insight into how people are using these coding agents to do certain things. So for example, in the State of Flint blog post, Josh does talk about how they are using AI to port lint rules and things like that, and how to cover all of these existing lint rules that they need compatibility with. In the agent builds a JavaScript engine from scratch. Like obviously that was all Claude Opus, but it was operating against a very well-defined specification. In the Pathwrite library that we featured, that was almost entirely built with Claude code, where the original developer was like, this was on my like maybe someday list, where I might not have ever gotten to this. But now that I have Claude code, I can just have it go and build the thing I was thinking of for the past 10 years and ship it and like see what the market thinks about it, see what developers think about it, and if it gets adopted. So I feel like there's an interesting thing here.
Yeah, here's a thing that is just for me personally. So I'm only speaking about me personally. I'm not trying to genuflect on anyone. I do not use these tools when I enjoy doing the thing.
Mm-hmm.
So like if I enjoy making video games by hand, that if I use a tool like this, it actually actively removes the joy.
Right.
Like I do not get any of the joy of solving the problem.
Yep.
I do not get any of the joy anymore. So keep that in mind. Automate tedium, not the things that you find joy in.
Yep.
Like if you find joy in something, don't automate it.
Yeah.
Do the thing.
Yeah.
Like if you're a carpenter and you enjoy making furniture, make furniture.
Yes. That's right.
That's my takeaway. You don't have to do any. Just do what makes you happy.
Mm-hmm.
And do it yourself.
Yep.
If it makes you happy to
Yep.
do it. And if it doesn't, then don't. Anyway, that's my hot take. Number 2.
That's a good place to leave it, I feel like.
Yeah.
Nice. All right. Well, go forth and build.
Go forth and build cool things.
All right. We'll see you later next week. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Hi, everyone. This is Kamran. I just wanted to thank you for listening to the show, and we hope you enjoyed the episode. If you want to see the show notes, you can check your podcast player or go to typescript.fm, where you'll see a list of all the episodes. If you enjoyed the show, tell your friends, and please rate it on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, because that's how the show grows and gets discovered by more people. If you want to suggest news or a project that should be covered, or just want to say hi, email us at feedback@typescript.fm. If you want to follow us on social, we're both active on Blue Sky. I'm at comronicus.com and Eric is at ericonerheim.com. You can also follow the show directly at typescript.fm.